Well, hello again. We welcome most of you back that were just training with us. Thank you for being here. We are working on our 2023 Mom Congress Moms Agenda Bill trainings. We are excited to be joined by Jen Roray from Healthy Birthday and Count the Kicks. Today, we're going to be talking about the Maternal Child Health Stillbirth Prevention Act. And I will turn it over to you in just a moment, Jen, and ask you to give us an introduction, a little more information about you and Healthy Birthday as an organization. I know many of our advocates are well familiar. We can go on to the next slide where I'm going to drop a couple links in the chat for you today. As usual, what we'd like you to do is look into the Maternal Child Health Stillbirth Prevention Act, HR 4581 in the House, to see if your House of Representatives member is already listed as a co-sponsor. Ebony is linking that here, and I'm dropping it in the chat for you too, so you can look it up in real time. And then I'll do the same for the Senate bill. So S2231. Go ahead and have a look at that co-sponsor tab and see if your senator is already signed on. And once we've done that little bit of housekeeping, I will go ahead and turn it over to Jen. Thank you so much again for being here, and we look forward to learning from you today.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'm really honored and privileged to be in the room and excited to share more about the stillbirth prevention legislation, the Maternal and Child Health Stillbirth Prevention Act. So there are two pieces of legislation, as you've come to know, that are targeting stillbirth, and that is the first time in this nation that has ever happened. And so we are thrilled to be a primary stakeholder in the Maternal and Child Health Stillbirth Prevention Act, and also thrilled to be partnering with Deb in her work, long-standing and important work in honor of Autumn and with the Shine for Autumn Act. I am Jen Rowery. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Engagement for Healthy Birthday. Healthy Birthday is the nonprofit organization that is pretty laser focused on the stillbirth prevention campaign or program known as Count the Kicks, which educates and empowers expectant parents with knowledge on fetal movement monitoring. We also look at systems level change, and that is what federal legislation is for us. And I would love to share my screen, and I'm just going to talk to you more. Deb did a great job of really warming up the conversation surrounding the topic of stillbirth. One thing that I wanted to do that I feel like is an important thing for all of you to understand is the difference between a miscarriage, a stillbirth, and infant mortality. And so that's why we are starting here. I just want to make sure, so if you get asked those questions in these meetings, that you feel prepared to answer them. So a miscarriage, and these are US definitions. So if we looked at like WHO, the World Health Organization, that might look different. But in the United States, a miscarriage is the loss of a baby in utero before the 20th week of pregnancy, whereas a stillbirth is the loss of a baby in utero, a baby that never takes a breath earthside, from 20 weeks to the end of that pregnancy, 40 plus weeks, whenever that loss occurs. And then in contrast, in infant mortality, when we talk about the number of infants which we lose in this country, that is a baby that takes one breath or more earthside and is lost sometime between their birth and their first year of life. And that is the difference in the definition. So stillbirth is specifically looking at 20 weeks and beyond in pregnancy. And unfortunately in this country, it's a crisis that has been under discussed. Deb mentioned that she had never heard about stillbirth or that it was a possibility until she experienced the loss of Autumn. And I hear that phrase way too often in the work that I do. And I applaud these really strong and courageous parents that are carrying a heavy burden to create change in this country. because it's needed. Because in the 5-year average, on average in this country, we're losing 22,300 babies a year. Last year, or in 2021, the CDC reported over 21,000 US babies were stillborn. The rate of stillbirth really is not, it's reduced slightly in the past 20 years, but really we have not made progress in our country the way that other developed nations have. We actually lose more babies every year to stillbirth than we do to infant mortality. Both of these issues need to be addressed. And stillbirth is one thing that's just not talked about. So that's why we're talking about it. That's why we're honored that you're talking about it, and so deeply appreciate what you're doing. So what does that look like in a different way, I guess? So that means in this country, every 1 in 173 pregnancies is actually ending in stillbirth. If you look at that number, how many people we all know, it is really, really much more prevalent. Stillbirth is much more prevalent than your lawmakers understand or will expect you to talk about, and it is in many cases preventable. Research discusses 25%, 30%, up to sometimes 50 or 60% of stillbirths being preventable. And in this country, because we're not talking about it and we're not collecting the right data and we're not doing enough research, we have fallen behind, and we aren't making the progress that we should. That's why talking about it is so important. We unfortunately in this country see the same type of racial disparities that we see in other health issues surrounding maternal child health. We see unacceptable racial disparities. When we look at these numbers for Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander pregnancies, 1 in every 94 pregnancies is ending in stillbirth. For Black pregnancies in this country, it's 1 in 97, Indigenous 1 in 128, Hispanic 1 in 205, and white pregnancies 1 in 211, with Asian pregnancies being 1 in 254. This is unacceptable and has to be addressed. So these disparities in stillbirth also need to be discussed, and could be something that you talk about in your meetings as well. So the United States' largest funding mechanism for maternal child health programs, money from the federal government that trickles down to the states, typically the state health departments, is called the Title V Block Grant. And currently that Title V Block Grant, which was created in the Social Security Act of 1935, little history lesson here, that block grant has nothing that mentions stillbirth. It mentions infant mortality, it mentions SIDS, it mentions many, many things that deal with maternal child health. And that funding can be used for a wide variety of really important work, ranging from, Healthy Start programs to addressing these types of health issues and crises. Unfortunately, what we are not doing in this country is we are not addressing stillbirth. And one reason, because this funding mechanism doesn't mention stillbirth. There is no call of action to it. The Association of Maternal Child Health Programs, AMCHIP, is the membership organization for state health departments, and they support the change in wording that we're going to talk about, the reason for the piece of legislation, the Stillbirth Prevention Act we're going to talk about. This just reflects again on the fact that we're losing more babies to infant mortality and to SIDS. In fact, in 2021, the rate of loss for stillbirth was 15 times greater in this country than for SIDS. One thing that's really important to note is that SIDS is being reduced through education and empowering parents to learn and understand safe sleep practices, that Back to Sleep campaign. That's essentially what our organization is working on with Count the Kicks, to become that type of a program, education program that's going to create that type of change. And so that is the goal, is to reach your lawmakers with the message of what stillbirth is, that it's a crisis, and that there are solutions. They can be a part of the solution. So that's the positive messaging we want to present with the Maternal and Child Health Stillbirth Prevention Act. It was just a little history on this. We actually noticed that in the Title V block grant that we just talked about, that the word stillbirth was left off. And that it was not in the call of action from lawmakers to state health departments to be addressing this health crisis. And we worked with Representative Alma Adams out of North Carolina to draw attention to that issue and to help come to, I guess, to bring this piece of legislation to light. And so it is adding the word stillbirth and stillbirth prevention to the Title V block grant of the Social Security Act of 1935. It's a simple technical fix. It is bipartisan. There is no money or funding that's going to be requested with this. We have worked with lawmakers across the country, and really the conversation about stillbirth, we're really creating huge amounts of awareness by having this conversation. And we can continue then to create opportunities to do prevention programming and education at the state level if our federal government gives that call of action. And some state health departments have even mentioned that they are not sure that they can use Title V block grants for stillbirth prevention activities. Sadly, in this country, as the slide says, there are only 16 state health departments that are using their Title V block grant funding for stillbirth prevention. That's completely unacceptable when we have a crisis in this country, and in many cases, preventable crisis. So this legislation does recognize stillbirth and the disparity in those impacted by stillbirth, which requires, and this is where it beautifully ties and marries with the Shine for Autumn Act, further research, support, and prevention programming. And evidence-based tools, Count the Kicks could be an example of that, but there are many other ways that we can get babies here safely as well. Deb had this slide up, so I won't spend too much time, but I did mention that the two pieces of legislation do marry each other nicely, because Deb's talking about research and education and awareness and empowering. And then we are going to these state health departments and saying, you need to be doing something. So there are, if there are 16 state health departments that are taking action, that means that there are 34 that are doing nothing with the dollars that they've been given to Congress, because Congress has never said this is a priority, and they aren't sure they're even supposed to spend the funds. That is what we have to fix. We have to change that wording. And so these two bills marry nicely because we are coming together for systems change work, so that awareness, that education, those preventative pieces, those solutions can come together, certainly. We are gonna, just so you know, there I saw the chat there real quickly. There will be a follow-up email where all of these slides will be shared in a PDF. So that is a great thing. So both bills are critical. You can talk about them in unison, and highlight how both are a beginning to addressing this crisis at a systemic level. They're certainly not the end. There's going to need to be more done in this country to address stillbirth, but we're really, really thrilled that these two pieces of legislation can both work side by side to make change in our country. So I believe it says, I'm looking at the chat, the question in the chat, what are the ways stillbirths can be prevented? Well, that's a really great question, Kelly. One is through education. So if oftentimes, so if we talk about Count the Kicks, how would we talk about it? So educating on fetal movement monitoring could be one way that a warning sign could be captured by an expectant parent, and they could seek medical attention, intervene, and hopefully get baby here safely. But there's also screenings and testings that could be occurring that aren't happening. There are groups that talk about measuring of the placenta so that they can track the health of the baby in that way. There's several ways, and we need more research to know why we're losing these babies and understand solutions to those causes. So there are multiple interventions that may be solutions. For Count the Kicks, we talk all about monitoring fetal movement, because we know that babies are just like us. When they don't feel well, in utero, their movement can change. They're going to protect their brain activity and their heart function. They may be wrapped in a cord. They may be maybe there's a placental issue and they're not getting the resources, the nutrition that they need, like fetal growth restriction, etc. So there are multiple ways that babies can be saved. We have well over 100 baby safe stories on our Count the Kicks website, just through educating on tracking baby's movement in the 3rd trimester, learning your baby's normal movement pattern, learning how long it takes your baby to get to 10 movements, and speaking up if you notice a change, because like I said, that can be the only warning sign, and sometimes is the first warning sign that their baby is in distress. Not all those babies need to be delivered, but certainly doctors can do the investigative process and make determinations for what's happening with that baby and what needs to happen, as an example of preventative measures. Hopefully, Kelly, that answered your question. So what else can you do that helps shine a light on stillbirth, on these pieces of legislation? There are a couple of things. We created a petition that Deb shared, Stop Stillbirth. So petition will give an opportunity to families that have experienced the devastating tragedy of stillbirth, the opportunity to share their story. We're going to collect those stories. And then if we go into a meeting, say in Virginia, with lawmakers, or we have follow-up conversations with those lawmakers in Virginia, we can literally say are examples of constituents who have experienced this tragedy, and these are their stories. We want to carry those stories because this is a crisis that devastates families, and not just for a short time. It's a trajectory that changes their life. That it could lead to higher divorce rates, mental health crisis, loss of jobs, loss of wages, that lead to economic crisis. Just many things in a person's life change forever when they experience this horrible, devastating loss. And so sharing those stories is really what that petition is all about. We also have a one-click politics. So a way for you in 2 minutes or less, you, your family, your community of support, in 2 minutes or less, can take action. And it's really sending a message literally to the offices of your lawmakers, your legislators, saying, I support this because, and it gives you a chance to share your voice, that call of action again to legislators, to tell them that these bills exist and that you would love for them to support it. That constituent outreach, we've heard over and over again, is one of the most vital things in getting a lawmaker to pay attention and help get them to support a piece of legislation. And so simply go to bit.ly/stop stillbirth, and you can share this on social media. You can share it far and wide. And so that is another way that you could be helping to draw attention on the Hill to these types of actions. And I see Crystal came back on because we've talked a little bit about the next slide, and that's been shared. We give a full-hearted invite. We could not be more honored if any of you that are in DC were to come and share this opportunity to meet on the Capitol steps and have that community and potential photo opportunity. Crystal, would you like me to continue?
Oh, you can go right. I just wanted to say that I wanted to amplify what you were saying about the one-click politics link. So I put it in the chat there for everyone. It's just a great opportunity for Mom Congress members to reach out and get others involved. Like you said, sharing that message and call to action with your community, whether it's your parents, your neighbors, your friends. You can really amplify the work that you're doing by sharing that information out. So I just wanted to say thank you for the call to action, and thank you for the invitation for Monday evening as well. We'll be sure to make an announcement during our opening soiree to let everybody know that you will be on the steps on Monday the 18th. We're excited to see you there.
Absolutely, can't wait. Some other things, some other calls of action. So we have been talking about on our social media channels. If you don't follow Healthy Birthday and Shine, you will see legislative updates on both of those social media channels. But we have this Light Up for stillbirth on September 19th. September 19th there's a resolution that the Senate and the House will define basically or make Tuesday, September 19th, National Stillbirth Prevention Day. And so anything you can do to raise awareness on that date. Buildings are being illuminated all over the country. If you go to that tiny URL link at the bottom, you can see the long list across the country of buildings that'll be lit up. You can ask people to take pictures in front of that building and post on social media. Perhaps you share your story on social media that day. So another thing you can do is get social, like I mentioned, sharing your story if you've experienced a loss on your own social media channels, honoring those babies gone too soon and the families that have been devastated. Talking about stillbirth is a huge awareness raiser, using the hashtags, and obviously sharing that Stop Stillbirth, that One Click Politics link, all on September 19th could be another fabulous way to continue. And throughout the entire week that you're in DC, or before you go to DC, any of these calls of action would be beautiful ways to raise awareness and to join us in our efforts for these pieces of legislation. So that ends the slides, but I am more than thrilled to answer questions and stay on as long as we need to. I know we have a few more minutes, especially in regards to bills or how to talk about it. I'm glad the question was asked in the last meeting, but if you weren't in that, I wanted to address, there was a question about how to handle any questions on abortion that may arise, and I think the most important answer to that is to not engage the conversation on abortion, because abortion and stillbirth are not the same topics. Stillbirths are the unexpected loss of loved and wanted babies. There's no decision by that parent for that baby to not get here. It is an unfortunate situation, and they are not the same. One is partisan and one is bipartisan. Stillbirth is very bipartisan. We all as a country want to see healthy babies that are loved and desired to get here safely. And so we want to stick to that topic and not tie those issues together.
Thanks so much for bringing that back in, Jen. We really appreciate it. If anyone has questions, we welcome you to come off mute or put your questions in the chat. And if there aren't any more questions, I will go ahead and stop the recording, but I will be staying on for anyone that wants to discuss anything further.